Hello and welcome to another episode of Tales from a Professional Nerd. My name is Bryan Steele and I'll be your nerd today and any other day that you watch one of my silly little shows. Hello everybody. Let's do a fun, you know what, since it's coming out today, if you're watching this on the day that it comes out, Happy Valentine's Day. Whether or not you support a day to be extra lovey or whatever, or if you're one of the folks that call it Black Friday, or whatever. Just I hope you're having a great day and you spend it the way that you want to spend it. Let's dive into the week in Bryan. Personal wise, been going back to the gym, feels good. The elbow feels great. So things are making headway again. Mia, our service puppy in training, she is a handful. She's a puppy. She's 6 months old. She's learning the things, but learning them slowly. The true, I don't know, worry that we have right now is that despite her parents having been much larger dogs, she seems to be taking a while to grow into a large enough frame to do part of what we wanted her to be able to do. One of the things that Natalie needs as a service animal is stability, because when the myasthenia gravis kick in and sometimes her muscles give out, or she gets up, kind of a little bit of headway of, hey, you need to go sit down someplace. Having a large dog like Bruce, our recently retired service dog, gives her some stability to be able to hold on to help sit her down. And Mia has not quite grown into the body that her mother had. So we are hoping that she, bulks up. I mean, she's very muscular. She's a very like dense dog. She's very strong. She's very fast. But she's so short right now. We need her to grow up into a body that will be a little more useful for someone Natalie's size to be able to use as kind of a living footstool, like, support point. But either way, she's a beloved member of the family, and she is learning how to dog slowly. She's even learning, even the cats are starting to get a little used to her running around being a goofball. We've had some positive interactions that almost always end up in, meowing, hissing, and scratching, but they have started to come around, give her some rubs. They're figuring each other out. It took a while for Barry too, so we'll see. We'll see how everything goes. That's pretty much it for personal stuff for Bryan. Hobby. So, as always, Tinker Turf. Although, there's a very good possibility after, this might be the last episode that I say that I'm still working on the Adepticon stuff. Natalie and I have been putting a pretty hefty dent in getting all that stuff assembled and ready for Adepticon next month. And I think we're down to maybe seven or eight packages, maybe a few more, but I'm blowing through like 2 a day. So pretty soon, all that stuff will be ready. One more thing to call it good for the Eternals tournament. Super happy. But also, I officially did some painting this week. I had a rough day, to say the least. I did an entire day. I took a Sunday to write on a short story that is due for Catalyst. It is due here in just a couple of days. And I took an entire day to try and throw a bunch of words down, and I had a great prolific day, and my computer crashed. Now, in normal circumstances, this has happened before. I mean, computers do these sorts of things, and there's all kinds of fail-safes. There's all kinds of, autosaves and things like that. However, last week I also had to re-up, I had to renew my registration on all my Microsoft products. And apparently, something I was unaware of is when you renew your registrations and things, you have to go back in and tick all the boxes of the settings that you had before, including autosave. So you see where this is going. I had the computer crash. It was no big deal. I was like, whatever, I'll, let it reboot, blah, take the time to dust all the fans and everything, and then get it up and run it again. And I did. And I went to go open that file, and it was like, awesome. You have literally done nothing for a month. And I was like, okay, hang on. Let me find the old versions in the cloud. And there were none. And that was because, apparently, I had not turned the autosave back on. I have now, since then. But it absolutely kind of spoiled the day. We'll just say it soured me to the idea of sitting in this chair working on this computer. So instead, I took the time. I was like, you know what? I paint to de-stress. I have not been painting. I need to do some painting for Gary Con's stuff. So I took a few hours and got some paint on models. So basically the models that I give away to the people who do the special events for the Heck Divers 2 Intergalactic Heroes game. Those I want to get those models painted, and they've been sitting there primed for long enough that I had to dust them off before I started painting. We'll just say, but I got a lot of headway on them. I think another good maybe two more painting sessions, and they will be done. Which is cool, because that's really, other than printing out all of the materials and things for the adventures that I'm running. It's Gary Con is more or less in motion. Now, I do know, I think this weekend or next weekend, I have to sign up for some events for me and Natalie, which I'm looking forward to. This is the one show every year that she actually gets to go to and play games. I'm hoping that eventually maybe we can change that and get a little more, a little more access to her to do some of the other local shows. But this is really kind of like the one, convention that she goes to as a vacation. And despite me being a special guest there, and I do have to do some work while I'm there, it is also a show that I can normally take a full afternoon off and try and get a couple games in and try and actually sit down and play with her, because whether she's a DM or I'm the DM, we never get to actually play together. And it allows us to do that. So I'm looking forward to that too. But yeah, so a little bit of hobbying. Gaming wise, actually I played, let's see, we finally got around to playing the Rifts game that's been postponed several times. But the good news is, so we were expecting it to be just a combat heavy, let's go hit them. It ended up not being that way. One of our heavily combat characters had to be late to the session, so we were kind of like waiting, kind of like spinning our wheels, waiting, kind of doing some planning and prep. And then when they actually showed up, we just kind of kept going with the role-playing and planning. And while I was really kind of geared up and ready to just start cracking heads and smashing banditos, it was awesome. I think for the first time since this Rifts game has started, I feel like we actually have a plan that doesn't just include, we'll go in there and we'll deal with them. We're setting up ambushes. We've checked out different locations. It was a cool session. Obviously, our next session is pretty much going to start up with roll initiative, but it was absolutely worth us setting up all these dominoes for that way. In the next session, we'll get to drop them all. We'll get to do all of the dice rolling and all of the explosions and all the things that you expect out of a typical post-apocalyptic society Western fantasy game. Explosions. Also, little gaming, it's a video game thing, but my buddy and I finally beat the first the first main story of Diablo 4. I know a lot of you are like, God, that was easy. If you only play a couple of hours every 2 weeks, it takes a while. But we got through it, and we're starting up the DLC chapter stuff. So yeah, I love the Diablo games. I mean, the story is, I don't want to be like, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, like, it is kind of video game railroad-y, but it's a video game. There were a few surprises, a couple of places where I was like, ooh, I wasn't expecting that. And I'm very eager to see where the story goes. So it has done what it needed to do. It made me want to play more, and so we will. More info on that in the future. Yeah, I think that's really all the gaming, because I'm starting to get geared up for the next 6 weeks. I've got 3 different conventions, so it's going to be a lot of go. It also means, just as a side note, that there will be a few weeks where I will not have episodes because I will be on the road. But it does, when I get back from those, you will get a super fantastic episode, or maybe 2. I might be able to try and see if I can squeeze 2 episodes in 1 week. Bam, bam. Try to bring you guys up to speed on how things are going. So yeah, so that's pretty much how that goes. Work stuff. Speaking of conventions, speaking of post-apocalyptic, let's actually go ahead and start with Evil Genius. So the Sidekick is going well. We just put out a couple more adventure / game supplements that I wrote. The Take Us to Your Leader and the First Contact Specialist. Those are, while they are everyday heroes designs, they specifically the First Contact Specialist would work very, very well in an Intergalactic Heroes game. For obvious reasons. It's designed specifically for someone to it be the point of first contact with an alien race or a culture or something. So it'd be very cool to have one of those on your team if you were doing a space exploration game, or headed off into the final frontier or something like that. So those went up. Things are going well there. Just submitted called a supplement with my buddy Goob. Co-wrote that. It is Everyday Apocalypse. So it's a quick and dirty supplement for playing post-apocalyptic everyday heroes. And it comes with a very cool wise hero class called the Scraplander. Basically someone who makes the absolute best out of the absolute worst situations. And it has rules in it that I wrote rules for a license that we ended up not getting. Not because we didn't get it, basically we passed on a license that we were looking at. I got to screen a movie early, and it was really cool. And it was a neat movie, but it didn't have a lot of world building option to it unless they would have given us the ability to do the world building. With basically if all we could use is the stuff that we see on the screen, it would have been a very, very limited product. So we ended up passing on it. But in that time, while we were kind of mulling it around and figuring out what we wanted to do, I had built a rudimentary set of rules on how to craft your own armor and weapons and equipment from basically salvage and junk and the world around you, the kind of thing that you would do in a Fallout game or something like that. And I when we ended up passing on the license, I set those rules aside. I put them in I do this all the time. I'll come up with an idea or a rule or the beginnings of rules, and I'll put it into a file, and I'll throw it into a folder on my computer that's labeled for future use. And in this instance, we were like, we're doing a supplement for kind of generic post-apocalyptic everyday heroes. This would be perfect for that. And so I pulled those rules back out. I gave them a quick spit polish, fixed their numbers so they match up a little better, passed them through Goob so Goob could take a look at them and see if there's anything that that maybe I missed, or maybe a cool idea that could have been, oh, don't forget about this. And we put them in there. So I really think this is going to be a supplement that people are going to go bananas for. And right now, it is only going to be available on Sidekick. So I definitely, if you're an Everyday Heroes fan, absolutely get on Sidekick. And I think Everyday Apocalypse is going to be sometime in March. I believe that's when it goes live. I'm not sure. I'll let you know. Thing. But it will also it goes hand in hand with an adventure that's going to be released by the effervescent and esteemed Thomas Pugh, who's fantastic and creating a really cool adventure called Man's Best Friend. It revolves around a dog, or several. So that's pretty much with how things are going there. A big thing. I think the third out of the 4 legendary Kickstarter. So the 2 Kong books and the 2 Pac-Ram books. I want to say the third one is going to print right now. And then the 4th one is in final stages of layout and proofreading and things, and then we'll send that. And then shortly after we have them finished to be able to send to print, we send the PDFs out to the backers. So things are progressing very, very well through all of those things. Now that we've kind of gotten past the sort of bottleneck artist doldrums, getting the art through at Legendary, getting all that stuff taken care of, getting through editing. Things are going really well there. The armory is still in progress. And then for me personally, kind of a feather in my cap, no feathers, but imagine a feather, that I put the final tap, tap, tap nail in it's not so much a coffin, in the postal crate. I don't know. For the Intergalactic Heroes Player's Guide. The manuscript is now done and in the hands of, in the queue to go into the hands of editing. Once it goes through editing and once we get the art and stuff, it will start going into layout, and we'll get closer to knowing when that book will actually be available. So fingers crossed that part of the process will be getting done sooner rather than later. I'm really, really, really looking forward for that book to be out for people to enjoy and start running games. I know that here at GaryCon, I'm going to be here in just a handful of weeks. I'm going to be running some Intergalactic Heroes. One of our dedicated game masters actually reached out to me, played in one of my games at Gen Con, or Gamehole? Gen Con. I don't remember it. It might have been Gamehole. I don't remember which convention we played at, but I think it was Gamehole. But after the session, he pulled me aside and was like, "Hey, I'm going to be putting together some Intergalactic Hero stuff for me to run privately and at conventions. Would you mind taking a look at it?" Well, he reached out a few weeks ago, and I took a look at the outline. Everything looks like a lot of fun, and in fact, if I can find a way to work it into my schedule, I might try and jump in, or at least maybe spin by and say hi. But just even knowing that people are already talking about running Intergalactic Heroes, just using the beta document rules, I'm excited. I'm over the moon, no pun intended, about getting this book out to people. Plus, obviously I can't talk about the specifics, but we've already had some very cool interest and conversations with some licensed properties to be able to build off of the Intergalactic Heroes engine. So we'll be able to do some IGH cinematic supplements using some licensed products down the road, probably next year, I would assume. But maybe, who knows? Maybe we'll be able to tie some of this into the launch of the game. But I can't promise any of that because none of it's actually ironclad. The only thing that I do know is that the game is really, really shaped up. It went through several iterations of playtest, and has really it has really helped shape my my opinion of the Everyday Heroes kind of core structure. And I really do hope that people take a look at it and that it ends up being a big hit, because I think that it could be, and I think that it could be a really cool platform and foundation of a lot of different people's homebrews that are waiting to exist, so to speak. Yeah, that's pretty much all the Evil Genius stuff. Shadowrun stuff, writing. I could not put down words fast enough for Shadowrun. I know Augment issue 1 is coming out soon. If you get a chance to pre-order it, you totally should, because I just got done writing my second column. I have an ongoing column in Augment under Mark Reel, Real Talk with Mark Reel. And I just got to do my second column for the next issue. And I've got some short story stuff coming down the pipe. Night Court is in, I believe it's probably in post edit and layout. Just great stuff coming out of Shadowrun. My Gamehole Publishing organized play from the Wardens of the Eastern Marches has been submitted, accepted, and I very much look forward to running that at Gamehole. I put in some fun and interesting moments in there, and I hope that people will appreciate the puns that are thrown in there, because what's D&D without puns? Still doing a bunch of stuff with Gygax Inc., which he officially announced on his Discord, and I think through his Facebook too. Luke is rebranding Gaxworks to Gygax Inc. He has gotten the permission and all the legal rights and stuff to be able to use. It sounds weird, but he's able to use his name again in a professional format as far as like part of the company. And I really think that's a very cool step in the right direction to mending a lot of wounds and setting Luke's company up to do some really, really, really cool stuff in the future, which I'm glad to be more involved with that. Matt and Luke have been awesome to work with, and I look very much forward to getting to help them shape some of their future products as well. I think that's pretty much it. Evil Dead 2 still ongoing. The World of Drashar still ongoing. Warzone. So people are starting to receive their Warzone models. The fulfillment, albeit slowly, it has begun, and that's awesome. It will take a while. Alex is a one-man show for the most part unless people can come and give him a hand in his basement to start packing all these things up. But I know he is fulfilling to the non-retail U.S. backers first, because those will be I don't want to say the easiest to get out the door, but they're the ones that will be that will help him sort out any troubles, any issues. We've already come to the realization there are a couple of the sculpts that we have to be very careful with when we're packing to make sure that they were fully formed and whatnot. There's when you're dealing with thousands of the same mini, sometimes you get a little blind to it. But once a problem has been kind of noticed, hey, the gun hand on this guy is the weak point. If it's a bad cast, look for that. It allows us to then, as we're packing, or to kind of keep an eye out for that kind of stuff. And one of the coolest things about working with Siocast is it's a thermoplastic, and it means that all of these, any miscasts and stuff can be sent back to Trenchworks. They can use that material again. It's not going to degrade. It's not going to fall apart. It's not waste. It's just learning experience about particular models and particular molds. It also gives Trenchworks the abilities to relatively quickly fix these things. So if a mold is got a problem, a problem bit, or this particular thing is always, it has the molding machine has a harder time getting pressure to that corner of the mold. They can recognize this, they can fix it, and they can kind of redo those models without a bunch of waste, without a bunch of overhead cost because of material. It's really cool stuff. It's awesome stuff. And while it definitely has some specific rules in how to clean it and how to get the flashing and the mold lines and things off of it, it is extremely durable. In fact, almost comically so in certain instances. Trying to get stuff off of the sprue, you need to have an edge. You've got to have some kind of blade or side cutters or something to get that off. Because just trying to pull and bend and twist it, you are more likely to like bend it and cause it to like kind of tweak than it is to actually just like pull apart like a styrene model. But all of that aside, fulfillment has begun, and it also means that the actual like print copy of the rulebook is going into people's hands. And when I say that this is probably one of the coolest, again, I know I'm biased, but like the art is good, the layout is good, the stories obviously are good, but like it's all brand new art. Check out that mirror, man. I mean, it is all brand new art, and one of the best step-by-step line of sight, how to do line of sight in the game. I mean, it's really, really cool, and you definitely should, when you have the opportunity to buy a copy, you should. If not, you can at least go to Resnova's download site and download the rules portion, which is less than a third of this size, because all the rest of this is stories and art and lore and setting, whereas the download is just the rules on how to play, which you totally should totally try to get into. I think that's pretty much it. I know I've spent a bunch of time talking about my week before we get into the topic, but I just have a lot going on, and I like to inform all of you on how the life of a game professional kind of rolls together. So now we will take a quick sip of my W. I would say not a sponsor, but they are. And let's talk about the topic. So this video is coming out on Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is generally viewed as a romantic holiday, a date in which sweeties get together and do nice things for each other, buy each other gifts, go out to eat, watch movies, eat little candy hearts, that kind of thing. And it brought up a topic that I don't know if I've ever talked about here on the show, but I figured we can kind of do the brush by and talk about romance and intimacy in role-playing games. I think that would be poignant for today. It might come as a shock to some of you that unless you came from the Baldur's Gate 3 byline Thirst Trap the Adventure, a lot of role players do, they get into their characters' heads, they get into their hearts, and they often at the table will find love for their characters, whether it's in an NPC or another player character, or maybe a backstory that talks about a lost love. One of the fastest and easiest ways to, I'm going to use the term humanize, even though a lot of times we don't play humans. One of the fastest ways to humanize a player character is give them a love interest, whether it is current, whether it is estranged, whether it is a lost love. It is a fast way for a character who was just numbers on a page and kind of a rough concept to now suddenly be anchored to something, to a feeling, to an emotion, to a moment in time. And what that does is, for a lot of players, it allows them to get into the hearts and minds of their character a little more, because they've created this background, this story, this concept, this moment. They've created those emotionary tethers to mimic their own. Not to say, yes, everybody who plays D&D is like full of love and wants love or anything like that. That's what I'm saying. But as humans, as human players, we have certain concepts of romance and intimacy in our heads, whether it is one side of the spectrum or the other. That's there. It's in your skull. And by associating those sorts of things or role-playing those sorts of things through your character, it allows you to make the character's decisions and actions and behaviors come off as a little more realistic and a little more fluid, because you're using your knowledge and your own life experiences and histories to shape that stuff. Now, again, I'm not saying that if your character does not find romance or intimacy that it's messed up, or if it does, it's because you secretly are wanting to cheat on your husband or wife or girlfriend or boyfriend or partner or whatever. That's not at all what I'm saying. It's all about just emotional tethers. It's all about the ability to understand what my character might feel in this instance. And while today we're talking about romance and intimacy, the same goes for other strong emotions. It goes for regular loss. Oh my God, my steed just died. Does this character just run down to the stable and buy a new one because horse A is just as good as horse B? Or do you have that long moment of, Mary Bell is gone? That's completely up to you and the game and the do you take the time to realize that your character has been eating nothing but hardtack and salt pork for a month? Or is it literally just, I have spent a day's rations off of my equipment? There's lots of different ways to get into your character more than it just being numbers on the page, if that's something that you want to do. Romance and intimacy is a fast way of making a character feel more real. Obviously, there are ways to do this that run the gamut. There are some game masters that are very, very, they'll spend entire sessions dealing with the romantic connection between one character and another, or the whole scene might revolve around a conversation of two people in the back of a bar. Or you might get someone who maybe, as a player, they're not necessarily that keen on, let's spend a whole lot of time talking about it. I rather just sort of say, yes, I have a wife, she is at home, and I love her. Let's move on. Or maybe something happens during a game session itself, like the NPC is involved or something like that. The player, you always want to make sure, this all goes back to having good communication skills with your players and your game master. Obviously, if a player is not keen on let's role play a date, then don't. You can just like you can say, my character is going to try and persuade the guard. Roll a persuasion check. Just like you can say that, there's nothing bad about saying, me and this NPC go out and have a nice dinner and have some romancing after. Move on to the next story. We've now taken a long rest. There's absolutely nothing that's completely up to your. my focus went out. It's up to your comfort level on that. There might be some games. I mean, there are definitely some third-party supplements that are designed about making games more intimate and more romance-based. Entire subplots could be around wooing a character. And if everyone at the table is comfortable with it and the game master is comfortable with it, then, do you. You make, again, YTYC, or YTYR, your table, your rules. It is up to you to decide where you want to draw that line. And obviously, the whole table needs to agree. The last thing you want to do is have one character in the corner being like, I really don't like the idea. Please don't tell us about the orcs kissing. Then you don't. There's also the opposite. You might have that one character who really, 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 really wants to role play as much of this connection as possible for whatever reason. It all comes down to how comfortable everybody is at the table and whether or not it is impeding on the fun of others by kind of forcing this sort of interaction. One thing that I have learned, especially in this day of social media and electronic gaming, is that if you do have one player who wants to spend a lot of time romancing an NPC, doing a lot of the spotlight hogging moments that could make everyone else at the table not necessarily uncomfortable, but just one of those, all right, we get it, you guys are eating oysters and having a moonlight gondola ride down the coast of Waterdeep. Okay, one of the things a GM can do if they don't mind the extra work is do it in an email, do it in a personal message. Basically at the table say, you guys go and have a wonderful evening. We'll narrate that later. And then afterwards, after the game, when you've got some extra time, then you write a few paragraphs of how things went, or maybe ask a few questions to get a back and forth. So it's not just a narrative element, that it is maybe some gameplay involved as well. But you're also not slowing down the rest of the session, or maybe making some of the other players at the table feel like this one person's event is getting all the love, no pun intended. But yeah, I think that's a good way to do it is to do a footnote of, obviously they're not, unless the date is going to end in some kind of horrible ambush and a combat breaks out. You can do it as a narrative element after the game, almost kind of like a flashback. You do the footnote during the game. Hey, you guys have a wonderful evening. You guys talked. You did some stuff. Spend 10 gold on your fancy date. We'll narrate that later. We'll talk about what happens later, because it does give an opportunity for the character can then go, okay, I've got that bond. I've created that bond. I have done this thing. I can reference the fact that we've done this event, but it didn't bring the game down. It didn't slow it down. And everyone else can still react to the fact that it happened, because it did. It's just you don't know the details of it until a little bit later. I think that's probably my favorite way of handling, date night events in game. And then obviously, there have definitely been times I've been involved in one of these, is where player characters at the table find themselves linked in some way, romantically or otherwise. And it can be a little weird, depending on what kind of connection that is. Obviously, just like at my table, I don't expect my players to start yelling and screaming at each other when they're having a PvP moment, like a party conflict. I don't expect them as players to start, screaming in each other's faces. The opposite is also true of positive things. I don't expect my players to get all weird and mushy because their characters are. it is something that I generally feel that when couples play at the table, I actually it's almost like the opposite. Very rarely, in my experience, do couples that play together automatically their characters suddenly become linked romantically. It's almost like, in real life we are a couple, we are linked romantically. In our D&D game, we're going to be, off to either side. I think that is probably just a matter of, just like in real life, you don't run around killing goblins. Not that goblins exist, but you know what I mean. You probably don't necessarily have to reflect that at the table. Guess maybe. But it is definitely something that you can find yourself wanting to. I hesitate to use the term experiment, because that makes it sound way too scientific and clinical. Give it a try at the table. And if you find yourself in one of those positions where you kind of are thinking your players or your character might be walking down that path and coming to that realization that you may want to have those sorts of relations with an NPC or even another player character, that is also one of those good moments where you can take a pause, maybe talk to the game master, talk to everybody involved, make sure everybody's cool with the concept before you start going down that path, or at least, when you kind of test the waters, figure out where that point is, where it can then break to the narration, where it stops being about the actions and stuff in the moment, but it becomes let's talk about let's move the story along. Let's move to the next part of the next scene, the next plot, and we'll get to what happened later on. I think that's probably my favorite way of handling any sort of romantic interactions, because it just avoids all of the weirdness, if there is any. I mean, obviously, if there isn't, then it's not a big deal. But yeah, I think that's probably my biggest take on the bringing this sort of thing into your games. And then obviously some games it is easier and it leans into a little more than others. Games that are heavily emotionally charged, like White Wolf's Vampire. Vampires by their very nature tend to be extremely intimate creatures. And I mean that White Wolf system, even the Vampire version 5 Renegade system is even, it's built off of the concept of these emotional touchstones or treadstones. I don't remember treadstone is from the Bourne Identity. You know what I mean? But it comes with these. There's already rules built in to do these emotional tethers. So that's part of the system from the very beginning. Like when you build your character, that stuff's already going to be there, which sets the stage in the rest of the vampire game that you are probably going to end up talking about romance and intimacy, having those scenes, having those concepts. Some characters might use that they might weaponize it. Like there's a lot lined up for that, because that game system is extremely bent that way. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you play something like Everyday Heroes Rambo. That's unlikely. Or if you are going to play so I've ran the Transformers game. Yes, you can absolutely have awesome intimate relations and romantic love between Transformers, but it is not the same. It doesn't come off that way. It is less likely to be weird and squidgy because you're talking about giant robots that turn into cars and planes. So the game system definitely will lead itself one way or the other. I mean, like, any game master can do and bring this to their table if they want to try. If they can find, you can shoehorn it into anything. I mean, hell, watch the Starship Troopers movie. They found a way to shoehorn a bunch of romance into a game about bugs, or a movie about, bugs taking over planets and people getting eviscerated. It's doable no matter what. But certain settings are easier to do than others. And certain game systems, like I mentioned, Vampire V5 is built off of emotion. The Old White Wolf Changeling game, it was often a different kind of emotion, a different kind of... it wasn't as, I mean, you did have romance and intimacy, but it was a lot more of like the familial love that happened in Changeling. But either way, that was something that it had power. It had actual like game effect, is having these relationships. And I think that, other than just kind of fueling the narrative and helping you get into the mind of a character, most games, it is almost always going to be a narrative element. It is going to be something about building on a character, making it more than the numbers on a page. Whereas other games that might use it, like Vampire, it is a rules element. You loving this person who's like the granddaughter of your first victim or whatever, that is something that has an actual gamified, quantifiable rule set involved. That's dramatically different, and it becomes more of a thing at the table, more of a tool, more of a weapon to be used against you by the game master as well. Whereas those sorts of relationships in like a D&D game, it's almost purely going to be for the sake of the story, for the sake of the narrative, and for the sake of you being able to make your character more of a person and less of a template or a, God, I hate this phrase, build. That's, you kind of figure out how much weight those relationships have for you as a character, for you as a player, and for the experience of everybody at the table. It is... You might see, I know I see this in a lot of like role-playing game groups, a lot of older gamers that came up in the, D&D players that came up in the dungeon crawl classics style of go in the dungeon, kill the monster, move on, kill more monsters, which those are fun in their own right, and they absolutely have a place at the table. It is much less likely for those players to even want to even bring the topic up. No, I don't care if my barbarian, my 7th level dragonborn barbarian, I don't care if that person has found love. I care that their axe has a +2 modifier and that they can kill 10 goblins around. It's all about the setting. It's all about the expectations of the table. And if all the players at the table are like, yeah, no, we're playing a dungeon crawl, we're playing a meat grinder, I don't care about our relationships, then there's no reason to even bring it up. There's no reason to have that as part of the discussion. You're there to roll dice, crunch numbers, and kill goblins. But a game that is deeper, or maybe more narrative, people are getting into their characters more, they've got deeper backstories, and it is less about the number crunch and less about the die rolling and more about building the story around them, or kind of revealing bits of their backstory. A romantic connection, whether it's with an NPC or whatnot, is an absolutely great way to make that happen, and to kind of fill in the blanks in what makes that character tick. And it also helps, just like watching a movie and seeing some of those interactions between the different characters, it might help the other players to also get to know your character more by seeing you interact, or even if they're watching as an audience and not directly part of the scene itself. It just helps kind of get everybody's brain around what's up with this character. You know, what makes them tick. Why do they take up arms and go out and try and save the universe? And there you go. So that is in a nutshell, that is my take on romance and intimacy at the table. Funny story, true story. It was actually the over romance and sexualization of the stuff in Baldur's Gate 3 that made me super hesitant for a long time to ever get involved. Not because I don't want that at my table. Especially in a video game, I just don't want it to be the main reason I'm playing. You know, if it's a D&D video game about saving the universe, I want to save the universe. I don't necessarily care about spending an hour figuring out all the ins and outs to get the vampire guy to like me. You know, like, it's a different atmosphere. And Baldur's Gate 3 initially, everybody was just basically preaching about how awesome it was that, you know, all of these characters are super thirsty and love you. Whereas I just kind of wanted to know more about the story and what are you doing? And, oh, cool, Minsk and Boo is in it. Like, everybody wants different things at the table for different reasons. And I think that you need to be careful using intimacy and romance at the table. But it is an absolutely effective tool when used in the way that the table needs and respects it. Yeah, so I think that's it. I think that's my take on that. So happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there, or happy whatever day you're watching this, if it's not on the day that this came out. Please be safe, wash your hands, get your shots, wear a mask, do all the things that help make this place, you know, more enjoyable for everybody, and just try and leave every room a little happier than when you got there, and I think we'll be okay. Until next week, please be safe, have fun, play some games, because you know I will.